Okay, I've got two cameras going.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. And as you can see, I'm here with fellow attorneys Nate Broady and Leonard French. Very exciting. So we are here just to talk about stuff and kind of a casual stream, remind ourselves that people exist, that kind of thing. How you guys doing?
Bored.
Yes. Cabin fever now. Cabin fever, as they call it.
Yeah, it's been getting to me a little bit the last day or two. It's been getting to me a little bit where it's like biting at the bit a little bit. Yeah.
My favorite COVID-19 game is Am I Hungry or Am I Just Bored?
Oh no, that's been a problem for me anyway. Because like trying to lose weight and like, am I hungry or am I bored? It's like, man, I already have the binge eating problem as it is. So it's a problem that we got to watch out for.
I'm gonna have to go binge eat something right after this stream. I feel like it's like I got pizza, I got everything here, but it's crazy. I don't know how it is where you guys are at, but in New York, the supermarket shelves are like bare. Like we went to the supermarket and it's like really bare. It's like,
oh, wow.
The third world country out there. It's crazy. Yeah.
We only have sections in my area that are bare, and it's usually the cleaning and toilet paper section. Other than that, they seem to be moderately stocked. So don't come here, by the way.
Yeah, I've obviously read varying reports from all over the place on terms of supplies and things where various people do not have supplies, and seems to be a little temperamental. Some people seem to be getting supplies back, like the panic buying and stuff seems to be becoming a lesser thing. So I don't know, but I've definitely seen news reports that like in general it can be very hard to find eggs, very hard to find flour, very hard to find cleaning supplies, very hard to find toilet paper.
Yes, I found the flour section was completely bare, except that there was an end cap elsewhere in the store that had a whole bunch of flour in it that I guess people just didn't notice. So I quickly grabbed a family size bag of flour.
Yeah, so yeah, not so bad. But I'm at least drinking ironically. I've decided that that's my shtick for the rest of the stream. So
they figured out pretty quick in my area when they closed down the liquor stores, because Pennsylvania had some blue laws and now they still have some weird repercussions from the blue laws, like the liquor stores only carry liquor and they're all state run. So the grocery stores can only carry beer and wine. So once they closed down the liquor stores, the grocery stores figured out we don't discount beer and wine anymore. Just zero discount on it. So Corona, I figured, would be half price. No, not even a basic discount or buy one get one or anything.
Well, weren't people stopped buying Corona because it's coronavirus?
I saw some shots from somewhere.
I was going to take advantage of that.
Where it's cleared out. And when I went to Costco, it was no cheaper to buy the Corona than it would be otherwise. But I was like, what the hell? I'll just buy some Corona. So I got 24 packs. I'll drink ironically for a while.
Oh well, Costco hasn't even figured out how to go ahead and get a wine and beer license or whatever yet here.
Oh,
Texas must be more progressive.
Well, in Texas, they run it in a shop that's like right next to Costco, which is technically independent, so they don't have Costco branded liquor. It's very.
There you go.
Isn't it real? I know Pennsylvania is supposed to be like really, really hard to get a liquor license, right? It's like crazy.
Yeah, I if I was a liquor law lawyer, maybe I would know. But all I've heard is rumors that it's a pain in the butt and it's easy to lose if you don't keep everything basically perfect.
I know my former state of Virginia recently made it much easier for distilleries because you couldn't used to like ship from a distillery inside the state to like home consumption. You could for like wine, but not for distilleries. But apparently, they published some sort of emergency order in the Alcohol Beverage Commission says yes, you can now ship liquor.
Oh yeah, that's what the Pennsylvania LCB is doing, is shipping to home, except that they made it a lottery system. You have to go refresh the web page a million times, and I've refreshed it a million times, and I still haven't gotten in. So because I'm just drinking through my reserve, which isn't much, but I don't drink that much anyway. It's probably a bad idea for me to keep like going through all my alcohol.
Oh no! It's the best time to go through the alcohol.
It
is what it is. So it's like we all become. It's like you can take away my freeness, but don't take away my alcohol. I was reading about was it martial law in Hawaii, I think, right after after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I was reading an article about this relatively recently, and one of the things the military commander did was institute a ban on like alcohol, which lasted like 2 months or something. The martial law period lasted for like 2 years. But
Well,
the alcohol ban was like they couldn't maintain that. People were not going to tolerate that. So it's like
yeah.
even martial law had to bow to drinking.
2 years.
Yeah, I think the state of martial law lasted
2
for 2
years.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. It's interesting. Did you guys see the report from Harvard that said this is going to last? That they expect this social gathering, all this stuff to last for about 2021, end of 2021, maybe even early 2022.
In what context?
We're from what I understood from the report, we're at the tip of the iceberg, right? It's like they say it's like we're on a mountain going downhill, and social distancing is like putting on the brakes.
Right.
But right now we're still putting on the brakes at like 1% of the population affected, but then you still have 99% of the population to go. So if you just release the brakes and let everything open back up, you're back in the same position, even worse. So they're saying that now you're trying. So they're trying to mitigate it in a sense where the team at Harvard came forward and said, well, you would have to actually to get herd immunity where you won't have that problem. You have to do this for about 2 years. So they're predicting that you couldn't stop the social distancing until mid 2021 or at least 2022.
I don't think that's going to work just purely practically. I think the inmates are starting to get restless. We've definitely seen protests already happening. That woman got arrested, wasn't Tennessee, for protesting outside her city capital or whatever. That happened recently. The state of Wisconsin apparently just put in the stay-at-home order is extending for another month and 10 days. So another 6 weeks in Wisconsin they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think that this is really sustainable. And not for the least of reasons that the economic impacts are just going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. I mean, we've already seen how many people are on unemployment now? Like 12 million people?
22 million people.
It was 16 like last week, so 22. Yes,
I apologize. I got the wrong first digit. I apologize. 22 million.
My God, yeah, 22.
So
it's crazy. 14% unemployment rate.
Oh yeah. No, it depends
nuts.
how you calculate unemployment, because you don't normally calculate against the entire population. You normally calculate against the entire working population, right? So you'd have to do the math differently. So it's probably a little bit higher than that. In Austin, where I live, they said it's 25%. Do you have any idea what the unemployment rate in New York City is, for example, right now?
No, I think it has to be up in the 20s. It has to be up in the 20s. I know that the big fear is getting to 24%, because 24% is Great Depression.
Yeah.
That's everybody's they're concerned of now.
Yeah, no, I think you're kind of there. I mean, you're because you would imagine the economic effects are going to lag, because as the economy lags, they're going to be ripple-on effects. So it's like even if the economy restarted today, you'd still see a little bit of problem as people were trying to catch up. So you'd imagine that you'd see the trend continue. So you'd imagine it's going to get worse, a little bit worse and worse and worse. And we've already seen the mayor of Las Vegas said that they want their ban to end. No joke, right? Because all the casinos are closed.
Yeah.
So it's like that. There's a big deal there. And President Trump today was giving his announcement on what he'd like to have happen. He acknowledged apparently it's up to the states now. So his total authority has become substantially less since yesterday.
Since yesterday when he said that?
Yeah.
The day before.
And what else was it? Put in Congress on recess, right?
Right. Total authority was Monday. Congress was like Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I don't know what Constitution he's reading, but it's not really the one I am familiar with.
I can't seem to find Pennsylvania's unemployment rate. They're just saying 4.7% in February, but that's obviously not the correct number for March.
So the question right now is what is the end game? Because when we all started this in the long ago in the far away, right, the purpose of the social distancing, at least as I understood it, and correct me if your understanding was different, but the purpose of the social distancing was to ramp up medical supply, because we were concerned that we didn't have enough hospital beds and enough medical stuff to deal with the influx. And we have been ramping up that supply, right? We have been ramping up the things. And I believe the governor of New York said like no one has died from want of like a ventilator
No.
or want of medical
Correct.
care, right? They've all died because they were unsavable. So like we have not exceeded our capacity apparently anywhere, and we've ramped up capacity. I know if you look at the lines in like Texas, for example.
I mean, it sounds
they're
like they
well
had
above.
to increase capacity in New York City to deal with it.
Well,
so
I'm
if we
not-
haven't
I'm-
Yes, we
exceeded
did,
it, it's
we
only
did.
because we ramped up capacity.
I'm not arguing that point that we that the purpose of it was met, right? To ramp up the capacity. But the question is now like what is the game? So let's, if we assuming we are at capacity, assuming we have enough capacity, is the right answer just to reopen things, because that was the reason we started, right? So it's just an
I
issue
don't
of,
think it's a binary choice, but
oh no,
more of a
probably not.
phased rollout kind of thing. I'm
But
going to just add,
don't-
Nate, I'm just going to add one brief analogy. I used to do, and still would be available to do, sound engineering, especially outdoor sound. My buddy does it, and I was his engineer for several jobs. And one of the things he always told me was take pride in your work and do a good job with your sound engineering, but don't seek, fortune or fame. When you do your job properly as a sound engineer, no one will notice. It's when you do a bad job, everyone will notice. And that's the problem with a one-shot situation like this pandemic. If we do a good job, it will look like nothing bad ever happened, and it will be really easy to come and say, oh, you overreacted. You didn't have to shut everything down because, look, nothing happened. But if you do a bad job, thousands more people will die. Tens of thousands more people will die.
No, I'm totally sympathetic to that. It's a little bit like people who said, "Oh, we wasted all that money on Y2K." It's like, no, we didn't, because we spent all that time specifically.
It didn't happen.
So nothing would happen. That was the goal.
The reason why we spent the money.
That was the goal, and nothing really happened. So mission accomplished. We did what we needed.
Why
to
do all that preventative maintenance to your car?
That's right. That's right.
Well, the first thing
Car never breaks anyway.
The first thing to address was, especially with the social distancing, there are two reasons for that. And the first reason is because of the exposure. It's all about exposure to the virus. Without a vaccine, then everybody who's going to get exposed is likely to get infected, and infections lead to deaths. And when you're talking about social distancing, there are two components of it. First, it's the isolation component of it. To try to keep people from actually getting exposed to the virus. Stay at home, for instance. If you stay at home and you're not outside and not exposed to the virus, less likely to get infected. Then the second piece to social distancing is people who are exposed, but mitigating that exposure event. So let's say you go outside and you shake someone's hand who happens to have the virus. Go home and wash your hands, and washing your hands is an event where after you're exposed, then we mitigate so that exposure doesn't turn into an infection. Yeah. But the only thing that actually works, the best tool in the shed until you get a vaccine, is the isolation component of it. Now, one thing a lot of people don't understand, especially about the capacity of the healthcare system, is that let's say the virus was just to go have its way. The capacity, the people who are going to die, when you hear the 2 million number, actually one of the numbers were up to 12 and 15 million. The number was so high because it wouldn't just be people who die of the virus. It's also going to be people who die who let's say were in a car accident, or who broke a leg and now or who have an asthma attack and go to the hospital, and all the hospital beds are taken. Right. So it's not only the people from the virus who are going to die, but just people who just need regular medical care, which we have the healthcare system for. And then the last piece of it, I think a lot of people just don't realize, is that, especially like in Michigan when they're doing the protest now, is that the reason why we do this is to save not only the people. It's not really just about the virus. The main factor now is the healthcare system and the capacity of the healthcare system to treat the people, just the everyday things. And one of the big issues I think I don't understand why the numbers are a lot better than what were predicted is because there was a secondary effect that a lot of the experts didn't realize would happen with self-isolation. Like here in New York, there was a phenomenon that happened where just people weren't going to the hospital. Like a lot of people who get a broken leg, a lot of people who would just have an asthma attack aren't coming to the hospital because they're not doing things that put them at higher risk for hospitalization. So we've had, in the past month, the lowest amount of hospitalizations for anything else other than COVID. And that's just because people are now, it's less likely you're going to be injured. So that effect actually increased the healthcare system, keeping people at home. So it's a multitude of factors that you're dealing with to keep people healthy and to keep the whole community, safe, not just COVID-19 patients.
Yeah.
That was like a long
and people need to be really clear that when we do this properly, it will look like the virus just wasn't that bad. But we already have all the data that we need to tell that this is what the spread's going to be like if we don't self-isolate. So it's a questionable decision to hold a protest that violates social distancing and blocks access to the hospital in Michigan, for example.
Well, blocking access to the hospital,
short-sighted, really short-sighted there. You got to think through your protest efforts and make it an effective protest, not a protest that makes you look like an idiot.
We're blocking access to the hospital. Why?
But
because to protest the closure of businesses in Michigan.
Okay.
The entrancement in freedom or whatever on
but I am sympathetic to those people who are protesting. No, because they've been at home for most people live week to week, paycheck to paycheck, and now you're talking about 6 weeks without any money, without any paycheck. You're most people are prideful, so you're going to maybe the church now to get food. It's real pain out there, and they haven't gotten the stimulus checks because Trump wants to put his name on them. You know what I'm saying? We got to wait another week because he wants to put his name on the checks before we can get them. So there's a lot going on out there, and those people who are on the streets.
Is that a real thing? Like he actually is holding up the physical checks because he wants his name on them, so that it looks like it came from Trump when it was actually created by Congress.
As I understand that they had to delay to put his name in the memo line so that Do
you remember when Obama did that? Remember when Obama took credit for everything and that the Congress did?
Not really, no.
Nah, yeah. This is insane.
President Trump may be a bit more of a narcissist.
Yeah.
It's like really, he's holding up people's checks. People who haven't eaten, people who have no money, people can't pay their rent. He's holding them up just so they can put his name on the check. That's horrible. That's really disgusting.
I mean, but seriously, like, did that actually end up being a real thing that they're going to do, or was it just another one of his things he says?
No, that's what they're doing now. They are putting his names on the checks. That's what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people will never see it because a lot of people get direct deposit anyway. So
I think
right. That's what I think we're talking about. Is only people who need to receive a paper check are going to have their checks delayed. And if you think it through, people who don't have a checking account with direct deposit are probably people who are poorer and have had problems with banks. And so they don't have a checking account. They're going to take that check with Trump's name on it. And when they eventually get it, they're going to take it to a check cashing company
which is kind of sad too. Yeah, the check cashing company's going to take their cut too. That's sad.
Yeah. So what's that going to be? $36 out of your $1,200 check or something.
I don't know what the rules of this are, but yeah, it's a thing. But I am very sympathetic to the protesters, not to the part where they're holding up the hospital. That's no good. But if they're protesting outside like Capitol or a mayor's office, I'd be much more sympathetic. But
they intentionally did a road blockage. They all drove their cars, and they pretty much parked their cars in the middle of the road, even though they're not really blocking much else because people aren't driving anyway. But they did end up blocking an ambulance from getting to the hospital.
Not so great.
Which is crazy. That's insane.
No,
but I think it's selfishness though. People are being selfish at that point.
Oh yeah, it's extremely selfish.
I'm going to go with the theory that they didn't realize what the consequences of that would be, and they didn't realize that they'd be blocking ambulance. So I'm going to go with lack of foresight. Be generous, but yeah,
that's pretty damn generous. I don't think that all those thousands of people or hundreds of people, however many it was, I don't think they all lacked the foresight. I'm pretty sure some of them were also malicious actors.
Yeah, maybe. But I going back to the bigger point though on the issue, it's like I just don't think that people are going to tolerate this indefinitely. People want to get out, they want to live their lives, they want to get to work, and they need to get to work, and people can't do normal things. And I mean, what are we going to do? Really just stay in these kind of quarantine conditions for a vaccine to be invented, whenever that might happen.
I think that's on the table. I think it's on the table to go maintain some kind of new normal until we are vaccinated to the point of herd immunity. And even then, there will be people who can't get the vaccine. So if we truly care about our fellow man, which is something they still teach in Christian religion, then we should be doing whatever we can to, ease the suffering on our most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the herd immunity is gonna. That's the goal. But it's just how do you get there? And again, I just want to bring everybody back. We're talking about right now, because of testing, we're talking about 1% of the American population who have been tested, and what, only 600,000 of them have been found positive with the virus. So you have maybe another 2.4 million people who've tested negative, who can maybe even still be infected. So a lot of people who can possibly be infected with this virus.
We will need some kind of antibodies test. I recently had a conversation with some friends of mine who swear up and down that they had the exact coronavirus symptoms back before it was a major outbreak, like back in December or January, and they swear they had the exact symptoms, but where do they go to get tested for antibodies? Nobody's really doing that in our area. How do you confirm whether the population has achieved herd immunity? I'm not sure how you do that.
Testing.
Well, yes, with testing, but we don't have testing right now at that level.
Yeah, this all of course assumes that once you've had the disease that you can't get it again, or it won't flare up again, or it's not seasonal, or it won't mutate, or a vaccine will be effective when it's invented. I mean, there's a lot of contingencies built into this that are not necessarily a given. There are a lot of viruses that stay with you indefinitely and that flare up from time to time, go through mutations. I mean, we can point another number of examples. So,
the flu. That's why you get a new flu vaccine every year, because it mutates so much and there's different strains. So it just unfortunately, I think this. And at the beginning, they said this is going to be like the seasonal flu, right? This is going to be like every year you're going to get a new vaccine for it. So, if that even make possible,
I don't know. I mean, if it were really necessary to maintain this for 12, 18 months, I mean, the economic hit, we can't maintain the economic hit. I mean, there's, the unemployment numbers that we're seeing are only going to get worse and worse. You're talking about greater than Great Depression numbers for longer periods of time, and people are not being able to get food, and food banks not having money or things, and not being able to get it because supply chains have been disrupted and all the rest of it. So, I just don't think that that's particularly a workable solution. I mean, the economic realities are real. And they matter to people too. So there's a cost there that needs to be factored in.
I'm glad I'm not the one that's making the decisions on it. That's the only thing I can say, because you're right. It's a hell of a choice to make. But eventually the economy is going to become life. Right now it's between life and the economy, but eventually the economy, that part of the economy, because now you're talking about people, eating, people, just basic human needs are going to have to be taken care of. And if you can't get to that, if you get to the point where sheltering in place, people can't eat and are starving, then now you have another issue. So I don't know how the government's going to do it. They don't have bottomless wallets, but we got to have, there's got to be something more that we can do other than just shelter in place.
Yeah, well, we haven't been through anything like this in this country in a long time, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in a lot of other countries, because, of course, all the countries in the world are going through various different policies. Some are more open, some are less locked down. Yeah, Sweden just said, forget about it. Let them all die. We're going to go through full herd immunity. They didn't quite say it that way, but yeah,
that's what they're doing. They said, hey, if you get it, you're going to die. We're going to go through full herd immunity. Let the virus take its course. That's Sweden's policy. Let the virus take its course. Boom.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. As a person who might be at risk, I'm substantially overweight. I've had very, very bad asthma as a kid, so I would imagine that's got to be a problem. Someone who has risk factors, but nevertheless, it's because I'm trying to balance out the equation in my head and trying to balance out the relative harms. It's I don't know that it can be sustainable to maintain this forever. And I think people are already beginning to show. problems.
Again, it's not a binary question of whether it's, you know, forever or not. It's going to be as long as it takes to achieve numbers that indicate that we've overcome the contagious period in a way that is manageable. So it's more of a wait and see kind of a thing. Put measures in place to protect everybody, and then have a phased, you know, plan to end it when we see certain metrics are met.
Yeah, I think as we get more and more data, we'll be able to cast more and more intelligent decisions. So, you know, that's a thing. So, if you don't mind, we can move on to different topics unless you want to say more about this.
No, I'm done with this.
Fair enough. Yeah, we'll move on to this topic.
Not the discussion, just more so just like, you know, there's too much misinformation and we're not the experts on it.
No, let's talk about something we're more experts about. Let's talk about law. I want to make fun of sovereign citizens for a while because I was doing a stream earlier today where I was responding to this guy, as you might have saw it, where this guy asked me these 10 kind of sovereign citizen questions. I'm like, well, I'll give it a go, trying to like educate this guy. But the thing that really sort of gets me about the sovereign citizens the most is just like they want to like have their cake and eat it too. That's what really bothers me. It's like,
well,
okay,
confirmation bias is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you want to take the position that you are a sovereign entity unto yourself, and you're not subject to like the laws of whatever it is you don't want to be subject to. I'm like, oh, okay, but you also simultaneously want to like drive on our roads and live in our society and interact with the businesses that exist under like the regulations of the government and so forth and so on. So
do you remember when Obama said you didn't earn that?
Yeah.
And the Republicans had like an entire shit fit because they took it to mean that you didn't earn your business. Yeah. But rather he was just saying like you didn't, your business also took advantage of the public infrastructure system.
Yeah. I mean, but not even on a business level. It's just on a personal level. It's like you want to be sovereign from the state, and you also want to interact with the society that has decided to incorporate themselves in a particular governmental arrangement. It's a very sort of weird place to be. It's like, I don't think I'm subject to the laws, but I want to drive on your roads and not be subject to your laws. It's like, but I also believe in the fundamental right to contract. I believe in fundamental right to contract. It's like, but you're using our roads. But, so like, doesn't that come with some sort of obligation?
And citing UCC 13081, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what? One thing I always wondered, why don't they just renounce their citizenship and become stateless? Like you can renounce your citizenship and become stateless, and then you don't have the problem. You don't, but then you have a couple other problems. So, but
isn't it true that that's not effective when you only have one citizenship and that citizenship is United States and you currently live there?
No, I think you can become stateless. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think you renounce your citizenship.
I would not recommend it for every possible reason.
But there are groups of people who are stateless, like the Palestinians are considered stateless, and even here in the Western Hemisphere, in the Dominican Republic, they passed a constitutional amendment that anybody who was born, any Haitian, because they used to have birthright citizenship. So then you had a lot of Haitians went across the border, had their babies in the Dominican Republic, and then they passed a retroactive law that made everybody who was Haitian stateless. So who was Haitian born in the Dominican Republic stateless. So they weren't citizens of Haiti or the Dominican Republic. So that
seems
possible.
Somewhat unfair.
Oh, it's definitely unfair.
Yeah, it's unfair. Of course, it's unfair. Yeah,
it's definitely unfair. But it's like, if you really want to be a sovereign citizen, it's like, just don't interact with society, you know? And it was really funny because one of the guys was responding on my comments on my thread. It's like, well, there's no practical way to do that. I'm like, yes, there is. You just want all the cake and to eat it too. It's like it's not possible not to be part of society. I'm like, it really is. It's just like, you like society and you want to play and you want to be part of society because of all the wonderful benefits. Well, you know, that comes with some obligations to the rest of us too.
Paying taxes does suck. Like let's look at the basics here, though.
Yeah,
like,
I was just working on my taxes. Citizen, there's no way I did them right either. So I'm gonna have some government come after me because I had to do taxes, federal and a couple different states because I've been moving around. And there's no way I did my taxes right.
I just got a $500 bill from I'm literally holding it right here.
Yeah.
$500 bill from the IRS from 2013, and it just says this bill from this form, and I paid off my 2013 taxes on a payment plan over the last few years, and I was really proud of myself last year when I finally got through it and paid off the whole thing. So how I owe $500, I don't know. I have no idea.
No.
What is it? Death and taxes are the two things, the absolutes you got to pay.
But so let's just walk this backwards. If you are a person who's already, this is the most offensive thing I'm going to say, who might be of low enough intelligence to fall prey to the sovereign citizen stuff. You've got a government that's taking a large amount of your money, 10, 15, 22% if you get to $60,000 a year, or over $40,000 a year, I guess. Mm-hmm. You're losing a quarter of your money to the government over the $40,000. You might not even know how that works. You just do your taxes and notice that you owe money or something. You see this government that seems mostly dysfunctional and a big fight over politics instead of a big effort to actually govern. It seems to be a mega government. It seems to be a federal government that has power over your individual state when you'd rather it be, having individual power. I can sort of see how the mental gymnastics can easily be taken advantage of by people who write and propound sovereign citizen literature.
Well, I think it all comes down to one fundamental question. I didn't choose to be a part of this society. I was forced to be born. Yeah.
That's a question a philosophical question I like to go back to. We all talk about consent and everything. Well, I didn't consent to be born. Like, nobody fully informed me in the legal sense of, like, by the way, when you're born, this is what's going to happen to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let alone, here's the individual bad things that are going to happen to you. You're going to be in this car accident, or you're going to, have that breakup or something like that. Yeah. Like, nobody asks you that. You're just thrown here against your will, and your parents then say things like, I paid for the first 9 months rent. You could never pay me back. And so you feel like you're born as a slave to society. You got no choice in it, and in the Buddhist sense, your entire life's purpose is to ease your own suffering.
Well, I think
you do have some choices. Like, it's like, even if you are a person who's saying themselves, well, I didn't make any choices up to this point. I'm like, you have a choice starting tomorrow, right? I mean, you have choices. Like, you're continuing to interact with society every day. It's like, if you don't want to play this game anymore, I mean, you can find a remote patch somewhere, and I'm sure no one will ever bother you ever again.
That doesn't sound like a very social way to live, though. That sounds like a defeatist attitude from that person, hypothetically, who's choosing that.
But that's if your whole point is I didn't agree to be part of this society, so I shouldn't be bound by. I'm not part of the social contract. I never signed the social contract.
Okay, but it's when you move to an area and you can't get any cable service provider except Comcast. Like, they're the only one. It's like, well, I can choose to not have internet and cable and phone, or I can go, I can go live on an island someplace or something. So no, it's a choice between a bad decision and a bad decision.
Well, you know what? I don't want to make the argument, even though I do think the argument is ridiculous, but I do want to I like to parse out the reasonableness out of the argument. Before you're legally, you have the legal ability to make a decision, before you can, that's the statutory age of consent, 18, 17, even 16. That I understand people saying, well, you were taken care of, you're being adult. But then when you get to the point when you are an adult, and the decision has already been made for you. I do agree with Kirk when he says that they're trying to have it both ways, because at that point in time, there's a choice to make. You can, take advantage of the system, or you can be not a part of the system and go move somewhere. Hopefully so you don't have to, go to Canada or Alaska and somewhere like that. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Yeah, exactly. But the problem
I'm sure you
the
can
Isle of Man.
There's relatively remote parts of Alaska or Vermont or something. And there's relatively remote parts of Appalachia. I mean, there's places you can move. No one will ever find you.
Exactly.
You can live onto yourself on the land. No one will ever bother you again.
No, there was a family in Russia. They found, I think 10 years ago, there was a family in Russia where it was right after World War II. They had run from the Red Army, and they found this place near a lake, and they were there for 50 years.
And before anyone found them again, yeah.
Yeah, that somebody came and just happened to find them, and they had tied their clothes. They're like, and they lived off the land for like 50 years and hadn't seen another soul until. So it's possible, but I don't know if anybody's really going to be willing to do that. That's a tough life to live.
Yeah. So it's like, and I just feel like, if you want to be part of a mutual agreement, it's like we're acting it out every day. It's
Yeah.
like it's a little bit Peter Pan effect. It exists because we all believe in it, right? So it's something we all act out every day, and because we all believe in it, it continues to manifest, and that is part of the society. So
Well, the sovereign citizens that I've interacted with, their main arguments are, number one, like the Constitution is invalid because of the Articles of Confederation. You needed unanimous consent from the states back then. You didn't have unanimous consent, so the Constitution is an illegal document. Whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's nobody's buying that. But that's the argument number one. So they say the Constitution is invalid. Then the second piece of the argument is this consent argument. They've been this compulsion argument. Yes, I was born here, this. But at a point, I'm saying I don't want to be a part of it because people call it the social contract.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for the contract. I'm being, I'm here under duress. What ability do I have? You put me in a system, and now you tell me I can't choose to leave out. So I think those are like the only real two arguments that I think have any credence. But I think the first argument, it's like what they call it, the 13th Amendment argument.
Yeah.
Was it really passed? Is it really? Well, yeah. Unfortunately, that argument is lost.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, this is an interesting thing listening to those people and the logical things they try to spin. And they believe in the magical words theory of law. They believe in the incantation Harry Potter theory of law. If I just say the right words in the right way with the right intonation, then they'll be all okay.
It sounds magical.
Yeah.
Therefore, must be true.
Habeas corpus.
Yeah.
Oh man. It's
so
so
Leonard,
crazy.
what do you got that you want to talk about?
Oh, I was just going through and highlighting something out here. There was a fun case where a photographer posted her photograph on Instagram. And so Instagram, of course, is a Facebook company. They have their own license. And so by using Instagram, you agree to that license. Well, that license lets Instagram do fun and cool things with your photograph, like make it available through their application programming interface. So this Stephanie Sinclair plaintiff uploads a copy of her photograph to Instagram. Instagram makes it available through their API, and Mashable puts it on their website through embedding. Like if you embed a tweet or embed a YouTube video, well, you can embed an Instagram post. So was that a violation of the plaintiff's copyright? Mashable had approached her for a licensed copy and offered only $50. She refused, and then Mashable went ahead with the embed. Instead of posting an exact copy, they posted the embed of the Instagram post. So, you'll scroll down the page and there'll be the picture, but it's surrounded by the Instagram frame and probably the comments there and stuff, whatever Instagram does to display their embed. And so she sued for copyright infringement, and the judge said, no copyright infringement. You granted a license to Instagram. Instagram allows embedding, and so Mashable was simply using the embedded image or the embedded post with the image in it in accordance with the license.
That sounds pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, it sounds pretty straightforward. It's like you're using their website. It comes with some terms and conditions. Ability to reuse, remix, whatever. It comes with the territory. So, fair enough.
Yeah, seems fair enough.
So I'm somehow going to make a much longer story out of that somehow.
As we all do.
Told the whole thing in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, you won't believe the third thing that happened in this story. Oh, that's a BuzzFeed clickbait.
Yeah, judge finds photographer loses license by uploading to Instagram or something.
I still haven't figured out. I still haven't really figured out the clickbaity thing of HUD lines, because I've posted ones where I thought they'd do better, and they didn't do as good as I thought they would. And I'm like, it's probably due to not being clickbaity enough. So like, how do I write more clickbaity headlines or something? I don't know. That's now something I have to figure out.
It's funny because the videos that I think are just garbage videos that I'm just doing for fun, those are the ones that blow up, and the ones that I put like all my time and attention to detail, those are the ones that nobody watches. So I'm like, all right, maybe I just got to just wing it from now on, you know?
Yeah. There was one time I was working on one of those complicated videos where I wanted to put lots of images and examples and things, and I ran out of time. I got through about a third of the video putting lots of images and stuff, and then I sort of realized, I can stop here and just export the video as is. The people who want to watch are going to watch and listen anyway, and the people who were only watching for the visuals dropped off a long time ago.
Yeah.
We have a super chat. This is for you, Leonard. $5 from Funky Fudge 11 asks, sorry, this is unrelated. How does copyright in broadcast radio work? For example,
I already got the $5. Thank you so much.
No worries. Example, why can bars play radio for free but have to pay fees for TV?
No, they can't play radio for free. And in fact, there are enforcers that will go around and enforce that. There's literally a job, someone working for the music industry. The music industry is not any one entity. It's a rather large groups, some of which are large players, some of which are not. But there will be someone who works within the larger music industry who will go to a different bar, or sometimes even multiple bars in one night, and they'll have a notebook, or in these days maybe an iPad or their phone, and they'll just write down which songs they heard played on the radio and which songs maybe came from the jukebox or whatever, and then their licensing body will go back, look at that list of songs and when it was played, and check to see if a license fee was paid, and if not, they'll file a basic copyright lawsuit and get that bar or restaurant to pay a license fee, or else face a full copyright lawsuit. Absolutely, they do that. Now, why do they get away with it? It's because there's only so many enforcers, and it's a crapshoot. If a bar plays a whole bunch of songs all the time, I mean, what are the chances that enforcer is going to come to your bar in some podunk town? And there's one near Lake Nakamixon in the middle of nowhere down in Bucks County down by me, a nice little bar, but is really someone just gonna drive there one night and be like, I'm gonna go enforce copyright on Dan's bar? No, you never know.
Here's an extension of the question. So for an independent karaoke business, because I know that they exist, will go from bar to bar, that will hire them to do karaoke for the bars. So if they wanted to run themselves legally, they get a license that allows them to play the music that they have in any location.
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
When a DJ buys their book of songs or whatever, or there's a license involved there that allows them to play those things commercially. The bar or restaurant that's hiring a DJ or karaoke DJ to run that sort of thing should check to make sure that they are properly licensed. And if they don't, then they've got the plaintiff in such a situation would have a contributory copyright infringement argument, unless the bar turned out to be actually blind to the copyright issue. If they knew or should have known or were willfully blind, they'll be found liable for the copyright infringement as a contributory copyright infringement. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's not necessarily good, but that is a fair statement of law. I saw on Tech Dirt, I believe it was, lamenting that the U.S. Copyright Office put out a tweet saying that,
Saw that
30 million cat photos taken, all instantly copyrighted. And Tech Dirt's like, yeah, it's kind of the problem that they're all instantly copyrighted. Like, this isn't the point of copyright. Yeah,
not the problem at all. That's actually, I think that's in furtherance of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. Are cat pictures like the most creative copyrighted thing I've ever heard of? No, of course not. But there's still something that we want people to share cat pictures and know that their cat pictures can't just be picked up by CNN or Fox News and used willy-nilly without paying a license fee, if a license fee and permission can be granted at all. Like, I'm not a big fan of Fox News or CNN, so I would probably not grant them the right to use my picture unless the license fee was really high or something. So just don't even ask, basically.
Someone
But
in chat also asked, Leonard, is the radio broadcast not music? The radio broadcast music portion free to rebroadcast? And this does raise an
no.
interesting. I know the answer is no, but it does raise an interesting question, because if you think about it, like the radio itself, the radio station is broadcasting to anyone who has a radio receiver.
Yeah.
Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who might be listening. So
sure.
the idea that, like, if they're all listening independently, like, that's okay. But if one of these people has it playing in their bar, like, somehow this is a massive problem. It is a bit it's a bit of conundrum there, right? Like, what is that all about?
I mean, you really just, I understand that it feels like, well, the radio is broadcast for free, but I mean, it's not. There's advertisements on it, and individual listening, there's no problem with. But if you follow the copyright law out, like literally the line is that retransmission is where you are now publicly performing something that you didn't have the right to make a copy of and publicly perform. So, I mean, very technically speaking, you're not even supposed to really be able to record the radio, although time shifting has been legalized through, I forget exactly which ruling, but it was at Sony, one of the VCR, time shifting rulings.
Betamax, yeah, probably.
Yeah, but so even recording it for your own personal purposes would be fine, but then what if you record it to play it back for somebody else? That's technically not in accordance with the law. So it feels like it should be something that you're allowed to do, but you're not. Another example would be if someone is doing a live stream like we are, and someone wants to rebroadcast our live stream, maybe it'd be a great thing for us to get more exposure. PewDiePie rebroadcasts the Uncivil Law Nate Broady Leonard French live stream. But if he did it without permission, we've lost a copyright. We have the right to control our whoever, I forget which one of us technically owns the copyright to this stream. I have absolutely no idea, but we have the right to control that, not somebody else. So even though it sounds like, this is generally considered a dick move, true, but it's not illegal to control the distribution and display of your copyrighted material.
So that guy who goes on the public transportation with the boombox playing the music that everyone on the train can hear is committing copyright infringement. It's committing copyright infringement. So we can get him for copyright violation among other things. I love it.
That reminds me of remember the Star Trek movie that with a guy.
I mean, it has to be. I mean, there's more people on a metro train than there is in a bar. So it's like if someone in New York City walks into the metro train,
transformative. Maybe it's a fair use. I don't know, because you're not playing it for the purposes of. I mean, there's lots of people who are listening who don't want to listen to that.
That's true.
So you're not necessarily playing it for the same purpose, but yeah, I mean, on some level, that's a really, let's put that one on the bar exam or in a copyright class final exam and see all the students freak out, because that one's a hard one. That's a real hard one. Is that a fair use? Is that a public performance? Is that a personal use? And he's just using big speakers. Like, At what point do my cans on my head become so loud? Or am I then, that I'm then using them as speakers and other people can hear, and that crosses the line into copyright infringement? That's a really good question.
I love it. Yeah, because on the theoretical world where this guy is somehow walking into the train without anyone else being there, but once he gets on the train, there's like 50 people there. At what point, if at any, did it become copyright infringement? I love it.
I think that's the point at which it advances to false imprisonment.
Well, there's definitely some issues there too.
And some sort of terroristic torture.
Yeah, no. It's if you're playing radio in a subway car, I would like to beat you.
Especially if it's Bjork.
We could do worse.
Well, I don't know where you guys live, where you guys can play radio in subway cars, because here in New York, most of the subways are underground. So, maybe if when you get uptown, you can they go above ground, but most of the subways
you got MP3
are
players,
so.
You got Bluetooth.
Yeah, maybe that. But
I mean, it happened every once in a while when I took the metro in DC. When someone would come on with a speaker that was playing audibly, and I wanted to strangle them. So
yes. I think Congress should pass that law, making it legal to strangle people who are having speakerphone conversations or listening to music loudly.
I was baited, man. I was baited. It's interstate commerce, so
Police powers of the state. Police powers of the state.
Yeah.
Immunity from basic assault charges.
Yeah. It was a sudden impulse, Your Honor. I, I didn't understand what was happening. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's all good stuff. Yeah. So, how's everything else going in New York, Nate? How long have you been in whatever state this is now being for you? What is the day count? Are you keeping day count like it's prison or what?
I was keeping day count, but this has got to be what, because we started March 16th, so it's April 16th.
So
This
it's
is
a
probably
month.
about a month. It's
A
about
month.
exactly a month. Today would make the exactly a
So it
month.
started on
Actually,
the
it's
Ides of March.
interesting.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I've been doing just to keep some time. I was trying to do this, do the videos and stuff, but the biggest issue I got is I got 2 kids. So now I've become what happened here in New York. I have I don't know why this is just, maybe I'm not sure if this is in every state, but in New York they're not allowing you to file anything. So I have cases that I want to file stuff with, but I can't. But they've stopped you from filing everything unless you have like an emergency TRO or something like that. It's got to be like some real serious something. But you can't file in anything
Well, if you have
other
a
than
statute of
criminal stuff.
limitations issue.
They've waived it. The governor's waived the statute of limitations. So you're given some time for SOL. So which is great. So but it's put all our work kind of on hold. And now, since I have my 2 kids, I'm like Mr. Broady now. I'm the teacher. So my older one, it's easier because she just goes onto the Zoom. But me, I have to actually go with my younger one. We got to ABCs and all this stuff. So I've become the teacher. So the good part is the state now is taking care, is taking care of us when it comes to financially, which is great. For 39 weeks they've extended. They've given us now unemployment benefits. If your kids are with you at home and you have to and you have to teach them at home because schools are closed, they give you like $500 a week, which is great. So that's what New York State has done from the stimulus money. But another thing is that I've done a couple of pro bono cases. Like today, I got my first coronavirus death case. So one of my clients, the client today, helping her go through the probate process because her husband had passed away and from COVID-19, and that is just and it's weird because you don't know things that were so easy before have become tremendously different. Like for instance, we were trying to get a death certificate. Before you can file it online and get it within like 2 or 3 days. Now they're saying it's going to take 2 months to get a death certificate. But now without the death certificate, you can't do anything else. You can't get the pension benefits. You can't do this. You can't do this because people, how do we know he's dead? He's dead.
The surviving spouse might need that money.
So, but you can't get any of that for 2 months, So now we're trying to figure out how do we get that, and then you have this is like so much stuff that has just been massively put on a backlog because you're losing thousands of people a day now. You know what I'm saying? So it's not funny, but it's so interesting how fragile the system was, because most people think. In New York City, you lose maybe like 10 or 15 people a day, but now you're losing 700 people a day. That is, it's just too much, and it's weird to see too, because a couple of the people who I've known who've lost people to COVID-19, their family members are now in the morgue for months. Mm-hmm. Like my client, their person died last month. So it's crazy because the funeral homes are packed up. Just imagine that someone dies 2 months ago and you're still waiting for the funeral. You're waiting to get them out the morgue. They're in a refrigerator truck. It's really insane.
Yeah.
But again, it's just something you got to deal with until the surge is over. And so it just is what it is.
The denial of spousal benefits or something due to the delay would be the worst one for me. Because I'm assuming that there's a number of spouses out there who would need the support of their spouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's
what do you
now.
do? Like
that's weird. Well, don't get me wrong. I want to be fair. The government and all the agencies are being smart and trying to help people get through this. But you have the stupid scammers out there who are going and say, this person died of coronavirus, give us their money, you know what I'm saying? And, and you can't speak to the person for a couple of days. And you're like, oh, I'm alive. That type of thing is going on. So now but you need a death certificate to show the person's actually dead. And now that takes 2 months. So it just, it's tough, but they're trying to get through it. And I think the city's trying to get through it too. But how do you do it in a way that you can verify the person's dead, get them an actual death certificate so they can go, especially when you just have this backlog. So it just is what it is.
It'll be interesting to see what the long-term changes are. It'll be interesting in particular to see if there's long-term changes to work at home, as a lot of businesses realize maybe that it's, something that is workable for them and they don't have to pay rent anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes. 10 some kind of dollars of some currency I don't understand from Dan not available. Okay, Dante not available. Question for Leonard. You said previously that content ID claims should conform to DMCA requirements regarding fair use. How do we know that content ID relates to DMCA instead of a contract between YouTube and the owner? I'm sure I understand the way the question was phrased. But...
contract ID. Good, Leonard. Content
ID, yeah.
is probably part of your agreement with YouTube, and we did see in the case from a few days ago, I forget which one it was, but YouTube did have, it was the Eric Mishiev case, the DJ Shorty Hot Forever YouTube lawsuit, which he's appealing, by the way, and we're going to see if we can get him to do an interview. I think he's offered, and I just have to write him back. But YouTube said that in their agreement with you, they don't have to obey the DMCA counter notice process. You agree to let them not send DMCA counter notices if they so choose in their sole discretion.
That seems really messed up.
DMCA content ID claims are probably not something you can sue YouTube for, but you can probably sue the claimant for the at least actual damage of a content ID claim, if not sue them for a declaratory judgment of non-infringement or something, because claiming in any way is still a violation of copyright. You still have the right to control the copying and display and performance of your video, and they are claiming the money from your video. So if it's not copyright infringement, at least it's interference with a third-party contract of some kind. I would go with those two at least. Unjust enrichment would be a common law claim as well, but it would be between you and the claimant. If it's an automatic content ID claim, good luck. It's going to be complicated trying to figure out who's ultimately legally responsible. YouTube is going to say that it's not their responsibility in any way because of contract, and the claimant is going to say, well, I didn't know it claimed. It was an automatic content ID claim. Blame YouTube. So it's going to be an uphill battle in those cases. So it could get bad if YouTube, doesn't keep going with making it better. So it feels like they're making it better, but we've had 6 adpocalypses, not the least of which was the latest COPPA one, which nobody really expected that. And then one day, the FTC has sued them for COPPA and won already. And then YouTube makes all the policy changes and then implements it January 1. And then coronavirus happens and we haven't talked about it since.
And you know what? Do you remember the FTC was saying they're going to do sweeps of the YouTube platform? I wonder if those sweeps started happening.
Did they really mean it that way? I think that was a rumor or a scam that I had heard. If you don't select the this channel or this content is kid friendly or not kid friendly property, that you're going to get a $30,000 fine. I don't think it's going straight from one to the other. I think there was a lot going on in between.
Well, from my reading it, because I'm usually an admin law guy. From my reading it, nobody was getting the maximum fine. Like their fines are, nobody's getting a $30,000. That was ridiculous. That was just scare tactics. Up to $30,000. Nope, that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Because there's a
somebody might deserve it. I definitely agree that there's some behavior out there that would deserve it.
Well, but there's a formula out there they use. The formula is based on how much revenue it got. Then there's a multiplier added to the revenue, and that's how you get the number to a maximum of like I think $49,000 or whatever. But what the FTC said particularly is that they were going to go after content creators who seemed to be deceiving, trying to get around the system to keep their stuff monetized in a certain way.
That sounds like exactly the kind of content they're supposed to be going after. Yeah.
And but I think the fear was there were so many people who were on that boundary, who like the Lego masters and people like that who were
Adult
using
anime.
Yeah, exactly. Where they were like, well, even though it could be considered, kids can like it, but it's not really kids content, and they haven't been going after those people, as of right now. But there are certain people who do target kids, like I hate to say the name, but Jake Paul, for instance, his stuff definitely targets kids. I think Nerd City did like a whole video showing like how that's
Didn't
somebody
Jake
who I
Paul
think
himself
would be
say that his target audience was between like 8 and 10 or something like that?
Yeah, he says he's targeting kids. Yeah,
So that
says it straight out.
That's
so.
kind of positive there. Thanks, Jake. That solves a lot of problems.
Which of the Paul brothers was the one that did the thing in the suicide forest in Japan?
That was Jake, wasn't it?
That was the other one. That was Logan Paul.
Logan Paul. Okay, I retract my offense then.
Yeah, cut him with the same brush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be lumped into the same category as my brother if we do two different things. But
they're virtually carbon copies of each other. They're doing this. It's true. They're doing the same exact shit.
Yeah. Well, whenever all this is over, Nate, I'm definitely going to have to come visit you in New York. I'm going to have to go on a plane and remind myself New York still exists.
It's so what's so wild is that like I was going to the gas station the other day and everybody has like the face mask on, the cloth mask, which is great that everybody's following the rules, but it reminds me of the scene. You remember those movies? Like I used to be into those horror movies back in the days. We see like the zombie apocalypse or where people are wearing face masks and gloves and walking around. That's like I'm living that world. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh yeah.
This is like
there's nobody
today,
on the streets. There's nobody on the roads during most hours of the day.
It's insane.
You get when it's a nice day around here, a whole bunch of people go out for a drive because that just seems to be like the thing they do anyway on a nice day. So it feels normal around here like that.
I've definitely gone out for a drive once or twice just because I enjoy driving and just to get some sun and stuff. I've gone for walks too. I've gone a lot more walks just to get some sun. But man, it's like just to get something.
Yeah.
See, the problem here is that we live in obviously in New York. They build you in and up. They put you in a building and build the building as high as possible to get as many people into 11 square miles of land. So we all have these elevators. So there's no social distancing in an elevator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
An elevator is like the elevator is a 6x6 cell. But it's funny because when we get to the elevator now and somebody that stops on another floor, now we got to fake the cough. We're sick. Don't get on this elevator. And people still jump on the elevator. They don't care. It's like, we got to get downstairs.
They know you're lying.
That's true. Yeah. We're like coughing up lungs in there. Like, no, we're sick. Stay off the elevator. But it's the saddest part, I think, here in being in such close quarters is that I don't think people realized how fragile our whole system was until something like this happens.
Yeah,
I think we have that. We have a full sense of security until a virus in Wuhan, China, forces us all to stay at home.
Uneducated Potato asks, on a scale from furloughed service workers to workers who have already been working remotely, how has this pandemic affected people in the legal industry, and what about us specifically? It hasn't really affected me personally, like professionally, too much. All of my work was being done remotely anyway. And if anything, it actually has eliminated one or two hearings that I was going to have to suit up and travel for. I was going to have to go to New York for a hearing tomorrow, and the judge just canceled the hearing and issued an order based on our filings instead of having to meet with us personally or even meet with us remotely. So I don't even have a hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. in one of my cases because of it. So that actually saved me money. It's a pro bono case. I wasn't getting compensated for it. So it saves me money. I don't have to go drive to New York City. In a larger sense, I see lots and lots of reports on Law 360 and other legal, like primary legal news sites that major law firms are cutting pay, are having to furlough workers, are having to make a plan. They're going to weather it okay, but it's going to change the industry a little bit. And attorneys that were familiar with remote procedures, like working with PDFs and e-filing and everything, this is an awesome time for us in the professional sense. I don't mean like coronavirus is great or anything. I just mean that like I was fully prepared for this. I have no problem working with PDFs, no problem sending basically anything you can send electronically. Biggest problem I have right now is somebody wants me to do a wire transfer, and my bank account, my trust account, the bank doesn't let me do wire transfers without going to the bank. So I'm going to have to figure out, is it legal for me to transfer the money to my operations account so I can pay through the operations account so that I don't have to go to the bank? Is that something that my bar would have a problem with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So
extraordinary times and all, but yes,
that's the commingling issue. You sound like you had a commingling issue,
right? But come on, they can't be so strict with the commingling issue that I can't even be in the process of transferring funds through an account just to get. That can't be the kind of thing they're actually going after. Let alone, how would they even know?
I know here,
report, or if I wasn't talking about it publicly here. No, I'm going to find another way.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, fortunately, it's had no impact on me. I transformed to full-time telework about a month before all this hit. So I've just been doing business as normal. So it's had no impact on me. And in the long term, I kind of hope that there will be some ability for people to appear at hearings without being in person, for a lot of different things, especially like things like little status conferences or stuff, like things you would.
Yeah, but what about criminal jury trials? I can definitely hear criminal defendant.
Trying to do that on Zoom would be a challenge.
Well, it has definitely affected me totally. Like now I can't file cases and things like that. For my criminal case, it affected me because we call it a 30-30 issue, but it's a speedy trial clock where you have a certain amount of time to bring the case to trial. If you don't bring the case to trial, it's dismissed. But it was a minimal case. So the DA dropped it, was like, hey, listen, coronavirus, and we're not going to deal with this anymore. And it was funny because it was like months and months of negotiation, but now it's kind of like, all right, listen, this is not worthy enough for us to deal with anymore. So it was great for my client. They walked away and did good. I have a housing issue. Now this is crazy. It's a crazy case, but I've been dealing with for about 6 months. It's a closing on a house, and there's squatters in the house. So we're literally right before they shut down everything. I was about to go to the court and file to get them kicked out, right? File to get them kicked out. And then the next day, there's a moratorium on evictions. So I'm like, okay, a moratorium on evictions. They can't be talking about squatters. Yes, they're talking about squatters. You can't evict anybody.
Is there a moratorium on self-help for squatters, though?
No, there's no self-help in New York. That's illegal. That gets put in jail.
But there's a difference between self-help against a legal tenant versus when you find somebody squatting. Where does your state's law cross the line from their trespassers who you can self-help to their overstaying tenants who have tenants' rights?
All right, the squatter, the way it works here in New York is that after a certain amount of time, 30 days, if the person's been there 30 days, then you have to go through the eviction process. Before that, they're more or less you can evict them without.
They're more or less trespassers.
They're trespassers. But these people have been there for 2 years. So we gotta go through the process.
See, if I was a judge, I'd be saying, Mr. Broady, your client didn't know for 2 years that these people had been living in there.
Adverse possession. Well, it's adverse possession. It's 10 years. They can be there for 2. I just got to go file the paperwork and give them 90 days and get them out of the legal process. That's it. We didn't know because the guy died and the house was there and they moved in. So,
and for anybody who doesn't know, adverse possession is a somewhat complicated legal doctrine. It's not even really itself a legal doctrine, but there is a framework for it. But it's the intersection of two laws. It's like when the brackish water, where like the ocean meets the freshwater river. It's not that there is a brackish ocean. It's just the operation. The freshwater meets the ocean. So you've got laws that prevent you from bringing a claim after a certain period of time has expired. And then you've got laws about tenants' rights and all that. So if someone lives squats in an abandoned property or something for long enough, and they do it with all of the indicia of a person who would live there correctly and normally if they're not hiding, if they're
Open
paying their
notorious.
taxes, open notorious for the full statutory period and everything, then what kicks in is that statute of limitations, and there simply is no remedy to remove them any further, and they can then go to court and get title to that
Quit
property.
title. Yeah, they quit title. And depending on how they've got, what, how much property they got, it's really complicated, but it's a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool. In New York, it's 10 years. So so it's crazy.
Makashima Wolf says, wouldn't the squatters' rights be in effect that they own the house after living there for 2 years? No, specifically, there are
10 years.
There's limits on. So sometimes it's 21 years, sometimes it's 10 years. Like Nate is saying, it's in New York for 10 years. So 2 years doesn't do it. The 2 years would count towards the 10, but then the moment that Nate goes to court and says, "Yes, we want to exercise our right to evict you," then it's over. Like you don't get to. I already did 2 years. Just let me do another 8.
Well, hold on, but just a quick question. Well, just for here, it's open and continuous. So let's say they were there for 9 years and 11 months. If I go there at that last particular time and say, you know what, I give you permission to be here, that kills their claim for adverse possession, because it has to be adverse. It has to be adverse. They have to be more or less trespassing. So by me going and saying, you're here, okay, I give you permission to stay here, that breaks it, and then they have to start the 10 years over again. So it's a weird little quirk in it. It's like for these people, I've already said, hey, all right, you guys, the clock is not good. Okay, we know you're here. Here it is. So they're out. They have their adverse possession claim is more or less done. Has already been done. But then I also have another, which is my money case, a case against the university here. And that case is like so strong. But so I was about to hit them with process, and then now you can't file anything. So and it's funny because the corporation counsel for this lady called me. It was gloating, almost gloating that we couldn't file anything. They're like, okay, well, seems like we got a little time to do this, but they made the mistake and think they were going to toll statute of limitations, because the statute of limitations on our claims were a year, but they're tolling it. So all this time is being told. So we're good with that. So a lot of my cases just have been put in a moratorium because of COVID-19. And the last case now, the one I was telling you guys about earlier about the COVID-19 deaths, is just some pro bono cases that I'm taking just to help people through the process. Someone's died, they don't have any money, they're on Social Security, and just trying to help them through the process. So that case is now blown up to be a bomb. But it should be something simple. So
it's always the pro bono cases that blow up for some reason. I've had to limit.
I don't know why. But I've gotten the biggest amount of money I've gotten was from a pro bono case. A case that started out pro bono that hit like huge, and the person was just like, I'm just so happy, I'm just going to give you this. I'm like, oh wow, okay, thank you.
Nice.
But sometimes it just happens. I just I don't know how, but
I do reduced fee representation when a client's financial situation warrants it. And one time I had a client who was so happy with the outcome of their reduced fee, they actually sent me $500 as a bonus. No further benefit. Just could have kept it for themselves. I was really impressed.
What?
Wish I could thank them publicly, but I can't. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, that's the one great thing about. I think a lot of people don't realize is that the relationship that I have with clients sometimes it goes beyond just the like. I remember when I was at a firm. I was at a firm for like 4 months, and I remember. I don't know how if you guys ever worked with firms, but it's like you have your hours that you got to meet, and
I worked against firms.
Oh, like it's 120 hours per month. It's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, the 2,200, 2,400 hours per year is insane.
Yeah, well, that's if you're making the 170 downtown, but
that's not like that's normal full-time hours, but that's billable time. Like they're trying to say that you need to be on the clock for a client 8 to 10 hours per day. Yes. And that's impossible. That's nearly impossible to do, ethically speaking.
Well, it's not impossible.
It's very close to impossible. It is a stretch, and I see all the complaining about it.
Just so people understand, the way it works is that most law work is not like everyday work where you go punch a clock. You're in from 9, you're out at 5, and you get paid for 8 hours. the way it works is that when you go in at 8 o'clock, you have to be able to tell people exactly what you're doing for every minute. And let's say if I go take a coffee break for 15 minutes, I don't get paid for those 15 minutes. So I have to be able to bill every single second. Now, a lot of people don't realize how much fluff time they have during their day. So for instance, in a regular 8-hour day, you're really working maybe 5 hours, 6 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
You take an hour lunch, you do something. So just imagine that. Now in a law firm, they expect you to bill for, a 40-hour week. If you go to work for 8 hours, you can't bill all 8 hours. You're only billing maybe, 6 hours.
Right.
So you really have to stay 12 hours to get your 8. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you have to stay like on a Saturday. Like I had to stay on Saturdays. And the way the hours work is that if you work, even if I worked every week through the whole year and on a Saturday, 6 days a week through the whole year and take 2 weeks off vacation, it would still be hard for me to make up those hours because like I couldn't get these sick days. Like it's really, really insane. But then there's some ways you can do it. Some clients, for instance, like I used to have clients call me. When I was at the firm, when I left, they were so upset. I used to have clients because you have what I call them big money clients, but you have some clients who just love suing people and will pay and just like have they pay the retainer and hey, we're going to pay it all. I had one client call me and speak to me on the phone for 3 hours and a half hour in. I had to tell the person, I'm like, well, listen, this is this ability. They said, listen, don't worry about it. 3 hours on the phone talking to the client.
Nice.
And I'm like this, and I at that point I was like, I can't do this. I'm literally on the phone with the client for 3 hours talking about bullshit, not even talking about the case. And I've told him already that I'm going to bill for this, and he's like, yeah, sure, billed and everything. But then it was like it got to a point where you can't see your family, you really can't. Like it's literally like my friends who are still at firms now, they still have work even in this situation where they're at home and they're doing it remotely. The problem is that it's so tedious to really, like, most people don't know how tedious it is. Every 6 minutes, you have to be able to dictate what you did. And if you can't, you don't get paid. So it's really crazy.
Yeah, someone was saying the 15-minute billing for putting a stamp on an envelope. No, it's more like every 6 minutes. So every
6 minutes.
You work for a minute, you bill it as 6. But there is a point where that becomes unethical, where you can't put 4 stamps on 4 separate envelopes and bill an hour, even though it took you a minute for each client. Like that's technically, not just technically, but that's actually unethical and illegal. But somewhere in there is what actually happens. Lawyers will figure out, and I'm not saying everybody, and I'm not pointing fingers at any specific lawyer, but many times the situation is that to try and meet that 2,400 billable hours a year requirement, lawyers will pad their billing just a little bit to try and reach that requirement, maybe 5%, maybe 10%. And somewhere in there, the auditor gets you and they get caught and they get either a disciplinary action or they get fired. Sometimes you get disbarred when it's too egregious of a dishonesty situation.
Well, 2,400 hours is pretty insane. That's if you do.
I definitely hear those complaints from big law attorneys regularly that it's 2,200, 2,400 hours.
Yeah. Because I know for us it was 1825. It was 1825. Anything over 1825.
That's one of the better ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's technically when you go further uptown, like into less city work and more rural work, the hours aren't as
becomes
compact.
Less crazy. Okay.
Yeah, but like even at 1,800 hours is a lot. But generally, let's say it's 2,200 hours because a regular so everybody understands the context. If you're working 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, it's 2,088 hours. That's what you're working if you're working the full year without taking any vacation. 2,088.
Yeah.
So 2,200 hours is more than 40 hours a week. So you're talking about a lot more hours.
Billable hours.
Billable hours.
Yeah, billable hours. This is not working hours. It's billable hours. Working hours, that would be something even insane. The difference is that if you go over, you're contracted. When you go to a law firm, they contract you for a certain amount of hours. For me, it was 1825. They said, okay, 1825 in the year. And then if you go under that, then it's a bad thing. You could be fired. If you go over that, then you get bonuses. And the more you go over that, the more bonuses you get. So it's really, really indicative. So a lot of times what you'll do in those, like say if you went to Harvard or Yale or something like that, the law school, and you go to a big law firm, what the first thing they'll do is that they'll you're making $170,000 a year starting, but you have no life other than working at the firm. That's it. That's all you're doing for like the first 3 or 4 years until you become a partner, or and then that's when you can start letting down. But that's what you're doing. That's your whole life is just the firm. Period.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have 1,800 billable hours a year, and my whole life is my firm. But
like how many hours? Because you're a solo. So how many hours do you bill a year? If just ballpark.
I don't really know. I do a lot of flat fee representation, and I can't say that I keep heavy track of my time on flat fee situations. And I'm really focused on copyright. And so for last year, for example, Malibu Media stopped filing new cases, which was one of my, I would defend against the plaintiff Malibu Media a lot. And Strike 3 Holdings moved everything from federal court to Florida pure bills of discovery, which are only now starting to chug back into the system. So it was kind of like a supply of cases was cut off. So I haven't worked very much for the past 6 months about, so I've been focusing on lawful masses because diversity of income streams and the opportunities are more consistent here. And I also have to figure out how to pay off my student loans, which isn't going to happen. So we might be converting this into some kind of public service 501c3 thing. And,
nice.
We'll see how that works out. I don't really want to talk too publicly about that until I've actually got it in place.
Yeah.
But,
that's smart move.
So no, I don't have like a number of billable hours that I know. And if I had to go apply for bar membership or bar reciprocity in North Carolina, where they require you to prove your hours, I'd just be sunk. So I'm not going to North Carolina anytime soon. Really can't believe they do that in 2020 too, when we have all these flat representation issues.
See, I can't do the lawyer jokes like a 0.5. So all you people know, I know 6 minutes seems crazy, but you really, when you're at a firm and you're doing the billing, it's the system is like a 0.1 is 6 minutes.
Yeah. And
if you do 10 of those, it's an hour, 60, so a 0.5 is half an hour. So when you're doing firm work, usually you'll hear somebody, oh, that's a 0.5. That's that's going to take a half an hour, or it's a point, or it's a 1 point. It's a 1. A 1 is good. That's an hour.
Yeah.
So all your time is thought of in these point system. Like, oh, that's a point. That's a 0.1. That's a 0.5. Oh, that's 1.0.
You just need to do it like mechanics do it, and just have a book quote. So every particular thing is the same amount of time, right? So no matter what it is, because if you go into a mechanic shop and you want to get a particular work done, they'll look up the book and say, well, that's 2 hours. So lawyers could do that, right? We'll have a book quote.
Isn't that
that motion's 2 hours?
Basically flat fee representation.
That's flat fee representation. But I'll tell you this though. One thing though, a lot of new attorneys make this mistake. Like they'll say, for instance, it'll take me, maybe, I'd get a 2 for a couple of motions. Well, it's 2 hours. I would get and that would be great. It's like, all right, you got these motions done, and then you'll add some research to it, so you might get 2.5. But what a lot of new attorneys would do is that, oh well, if he's writing this motion in 2 hours, I have to be able to write the motion in 2 hours, not knowing that they're new and we're billing based on their newness. So we understand it's going to take them 4 hours. So they would only bill for 2 hours, knowing that they worked 4 hours.
Or they get paid a lower hourly rate or something, right?
Bill, of course, but that's that's built in because it serves two purposes. It trains the new attorneys, and it doesn't hurt the client where we're going to have to bill you more hours because this person is new and this person doesn't know. But a lot of new attorneys will get in and they'll work 6 hours on a motion. And they're like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? You're cheating yourself, just wasted 4 hours. But it is what it is. It's the name of the game. I feel people are like this guy Nate is so money crazy when it comes to this stupid law thing. You got a super chat.
Yeah, I got a couple of super chats from Q Squared. Someone said 2080, not 2088. Yeah, I wasn't going to correct Nate, but someone else did it for me.
I'll be right back.
And someone also, Q Squared gave $5. Say, I mean, I work in technology, so I work 50, 60 hours a week. I don't think anyone should be required more to work than 24 hours a week. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But, this is one of the...
Yeah.
I've seen billing hour requirements from 18 to 2,400, 2,500 for some places. The amount of hours they'll actually work can be really... Man, this might be my biggest super chat ever from Django.
Ooh, you got a
$50.
A 50
I know.
hit.
Thank you.
Boom.
Thank you for this $50 contribution. That's super appreciate it. Thank you.
Super chat.
I appreciate Kurt and Leonard's videos regarding Kansas v. Glover. Yes, that made me very, very sad. But I'd like to hear Nate's thought on the case and hear all three of you exchange opinions on the ruling, time permitting. Fair enough. So we'll wait till Leonard gets back.
But you got to hit me with the facts with this case.
Oh, Kansas v. Glover. That was the one where a guy.
I don't know, Ken.
Okay. Kansas v. Glover. The police officer pulled over a vehicle for no other reason other than they pulled the plate number of the car, and they realized that the person who owned the car had a suspended driver's license, but they didn't know who was driving. So that the driver wasn't like violating any motor vehicle law at the time. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But he pulled the police officer pulled the plate, or his camera did it for him. They found that it was owned by someone who had a suspended driver's license, and the police pulled over the person. It was in fact that person when they pulled him over, and they arrested him and charged him. And the issue was whether or not that stop was legal. And
it sounds like it. Well, hold on. Before you tell me, that sounds like a legal stop under Terry v. Ohio, because you do have your reasonable suspicion of a crime being afoot if you pull the plates and they're suspended. That seems like it goes right down into that line. But go ahead, tell me what the holding was.
Well, the court basically agrees with you 8-1 that it was a legal stop. I don't think it. I don't think it was personally, and I commented on the stream at the time that I didn't think it was, because it went to like a propensity issue. Because the issue is like you don't know who's driving, you just know who it's owned by, and so
it's reasonable suspicion, baby.
I don't
reasonable suspicion of a crime, of criminality being afoot. I was a cop, so reasonable suspicion of criminality being afoot. If I tag your plates and it says that you're suspended license, I got a legal stop. Terry v. Ohio.
Apparently you're right, but for me it's like I thought about especially in like poorer families where they're more likely to be sharing automobiles, you don't have any basis to know who's driving the car. You just know who owns the car, but you don't know who's driving the car. So like, what is the suspicion that the person who owns the car is the person who's driving the car? You don't.
But that's not the standard, though. The standard of Terry v. Ohio is not. You're talking about a standard of probable cause. There's a standard of reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion doesn't mean I gotta know that that's likely the person who's doing the crime. I just have to have a reasonable suspicion that some criminality may be at afoot. And if I run your plates and your plates say that the person who owns this car has a suspended license, then I have my reasonable suspicion.
Yeah, you only have reasonable suspicion to stop and then verify that your reasonable suspicion is correct.
Correct.
If the driver is not the person you thought that they were, the owner, then you have to stop the stop, I think, is what it says.
Yes. Well, if that's not, well, hold on. If that licensed driver is not the person, yes, then it's over. It should be over.
Should be.
But the stop is legal. The stop is legal if it was a driver or not, based on the facts and circumstances, obviously at the time of a reasonable officer who is in that position. Because don't forget, the standards is about a reasonable officer. It's not about a reasonable person too. So it's about would a reasonable officer in that position have been able to made the stop based on the facts and circumstances.
I just didn't think it was a particularized reasonable suspicion. That's where I break down. It's a generalized suspicion. It's a generalized correlation. You're making a generalized assumption that the person who owns the car is the person who's driving. So it's generalized. So it's not particularized. So I don't think for me it worked under Terry because it wasn't particularized to the particular circumstances. And not for least of reasons, as I was saying, like, as these cops are using automated plate readers, there's nothing stopping like this car from being pulled over multiple times by multiple cars, as they each are flagging independently. And there's nothing this person can do who's driving fully legally from being pulled over repeatedly, even though they're not doing anything wrong. Because all they did is borrow a car from someone who has a suspended license. So for me, it wasn't a particularized suspicion. So apparently Nate is with the majority. And are you with the majority on this one, Leonard, or are you with the minority on this one?
Oh, Kansas v. Glover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stop or bad stop, Leonard?
See, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, and I was never really great at criminal law in that sense. I'm on your side, Kurt, on the particularized suspicion, but I'm still with the majority that it just makes sense to me that we can assume that the owner is driving the vehicle until we know otherwise. What is the major slippery slope argument here anyway? That I'm going to be driving my mom's minivan, I'm going to be carrying drugs in plain view on the seat next to me, and I wouldn't have gotten the officer wouldn't have seen that and wouldn't have arrested me, but for my mom having an arrest warrant and then pulling me over for that.
Well, for me, if you're pulling me over all the time, even though I'm obeying all the laws, I'd get pretty pissed off. Even if I wasn't doing anything illegal, just from being pulled over, I'd get pretty irritated.
Okay, I think there's one.
But don't forget, because I don't want to mix the standards here. First, we do have the standard for search and a seizure, and then we do have the standard for an investigatory stop.
Right.
This is an investigatory stop.
There you go.
Now, an investigatory stop deals with the facts and circumstances that a reasonable officer is presented to at that particular time. Now, if you're telling me that at this particular time, just like it's the broken window, if I go by a car and see the window broken, it's true that the owner could have broken the window himself to break it to get into his car, but it's a reasonable officer would have gone and investigated to see whether it's that person or if it was somebody breaking into a car. So in this particular situation, if you're talking about the facts and circumstances that's presented to the officer, you have a car, it's registered to someone who has a suspended license, then I think it's reasonable to assume that that person could be driving illegally, and an investigatory stop to see if there's a crime being committed is appropriate. In that, if these are the limited facts that you're giving me.
Yeah, I mean the facts are very limited. I mean it was a stipulated facts. No one testified at the suppression hearing, so it was based on stipulation. So I mean the facts are extremely limited fact pattern. So it's nice for a legal exam because it's like all we have are like 6 stipulated facts. It's really that they were driving this particular car. It had this particular plate. The plate did correspond to that particular vehicle. The plate corresponded to someone who had a revoked license, and based on this and nothing more, the police pulled over the person and then found that they were in violation of law and arrested and so forth. So it's a really simple fact pattern. So I agree with you. The question is, I agree with you that Terry is the issue that applies. We're looking to the reasonable articulable suspicion. From as I was saying, it's like particularized. So the way the analogy breaks down for me is there are not a lot of circumstances in which someone is lawfully breaking the window. I mean, in the grand scheme of all the windows that are being broken, you can probably reasonably assume that it's criminal. But we don't have any idea how frequently people are the owner who's the one driving, particularly as it applies again to poor neighborhoods and poor individuals, where I'd imagine car sharing is a lot more frequent and a particularly notable activity. So I'm very concerned with the degree to which this is particularly hurting the impoverished and people who tend to be poorer. And, I'm just concerned that this causes those people who, someone gets a suspended license and they want to share the car, and now there's nothing they can do to stop being pulled over and just being harassed all the time, even though they're not doing anything unlawful, because we don't have any idea, the degree to which, people are driving cars or others. So I mean, we're making this assumption based on nothing.
But couldn't you register the car in someone else's name if you've gotten your revoked license? You can just register a car, maybe. But I don't know if you're lending a car for somebody for a day. I do understand. I do understand the argument where yes, I can lend my car to somebody. I can't drive it, but I'm lending it to people, or even like here in New York, sometimes people for taxis, for instance, because when I had to pull over a taxi before, this is kind of the same thing happened. The taxi, the way it works in New York is that the car is always working. So the car works for like 24 hours a day, and there's 3 different drivers on 8-hour shifts. So one guy takes it, another guy takes it, but the person who's actually registered to the car, that person was, had a suspended license. So now you're right. That car is going to be pulled over multiple times during those shifts because it's under this reasonable suspicion. So I don't know, because it always gets back to the fact what I think what Justice Thomas says. The cornerstone of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness. And is it reasonable for an officer to see a car with a license plate that's registered to a driver whose license has been suspended? Is it reasonable to think that person driving that car has a suspended or revoked license? I think it is. I just think if those are the facts, then it's reasonable.
I'm still on board that it's reasonable to assume that the owner is driving. And this is coming from a person who constantly says an IP address is not a person. So,
well, apparently, even though I consider myself to be the most conservative of the 3 of us, apparently somehow I wound up with Justice Sotomayor in dissent from you guys.
Hey, that's a good sign.
So
it's a good sign
I don't know what that
across
means.
the aisle. We'll make Nate Broady and Kurt Mueller and Leonard French for Supreme Court.
Yeah, so I was like, even though
we'll be the 32nd, 34th, 33rd, and 34th justices on the 2028 Supreme Court.
Yeah, so somehow I wound up with Justice Sotomayor on this, where it's like I thought Justice Sotomayor was the only one who had a brain in her head.
License plate is not a person.
I thought she was the only one who had a brain in her head when I live reacted to the oral argument. I was like, Justice Sotomayor is the only one who has a freaking brain in her head. The entire court is insane. So apparently somehow I wound up with Justice Sotomayor in this one. I don't know what happened.
But this has already been decided. Like I know in New York, it's been decided multiple times about this standard. So it's like you would to overturn this would have overturned I think almost like 40 or 50 years of case law in this issue. Of course it would. No. Because then a lot of the stops that occur are based on the vehicle. And if you're telling me if you're telling me we can't make stops based on the vehicle, then it's you could have a problem.
Well, I don't know what basis you were making before, but you can't base it just purely on the fact that, because you don't know who's driving. That's the problem. You just know it's owned by someone who's driving, and you want to say, well, that's a particularized, reasonable, articulable suspicion. It's particularized to this circumstance.
So,
Kirk, you can make that assumption.
Kirk,
okay.
What about this? What about because this is an argument a judge made here in New York against red light cameras.
Uh-huh.
He was driving. His car was driving on the street, and he got caught with like 3 red light cameras. And I think here now it was like $150 fine, $50 for each one. It was escalated up. So he was saying the same argument that you're making. Well, how can you now penalize me because somebody else could have been driving the car? You guys are just taking pictures of the license plate, and you're penalizing me. So there's a due process issue, and the court said no. Because you're the registered owner of the vehicle, and it's reasonable to think that and on top of that, there was an issue about you're giving it to someone else to use, and this type of thing, just like parking ticket. But I think the assumption is that if someone does own a vehicle and it's registered to them, I think if the standard is reasonableness, then I think it's going to be hard to overcome the fact that it's reasonable to think that.
You guys seem to agree also with Steve Leto, who I discovered apparently has banned me from his channel because every time I try to live stream under uncivil law, all my things are hidden. So apparently at some point he decided to ban me. So that's annoying. So wherever you're, Steve, whatever. But yeah, apparently the 3 of you and Steve Leto are together, and it's me and Justice Sotomayor hanging over for poor immigrants everywhere or something. I don't know.
Well, it's certainly not for tribal reasons. It's more so just that's where we fall on our interpretation of the law and our expectation of the, society or social contract.
And incidentally, I would tend to agree with the judge, right? Because all you have, and incidentally, for what it's worth, I believe in Japan, for what it's in.
I believe in Japan too.
Yes, thank you. I believe in Japan they do have to take a picture of the face of the person driving in addition to the plate for this reason. So I think in Japan it's not considered enough. So the Japanese had it right on this and not much else. I did have a super chat for $10 from Dogbert. Former NYPD Commissioner Carrick pled guilty.
Bernie Carrick, yeah,
pled guilty to multiple felonies. He was pardoned by Donald Trump. In pardoning him, Trump said that Carrick can go back to owning guns. Is this true or is Trump wrong? It should be true if his only disqualification was the federal disqualification. Unless he's been convicted under state law as well, then, he's no longer a convicted felon. So, yeah, he's no longer disqualified. So he should be able to get guns. No problem.
What is it? It's Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's Federal Rules of Evidence. I forget which one it is with the pardon. I think it's like 6 or something. I got to look it up again. I should know this off the top of my head. But the Federal Rules of Evidence deals with pardons, and it's over. So,
yeah. So unless the state wants to go after him, so I don't know why he was pardoned by Trump, but yeah, Trump maybe he'll pardon Joe Exotic too. That could be fun. Why not? Let's go for whatever this is.
Well, Joe Exotic was under federal. It was murder for hire, but was it under federal or under state law?
I believe he's federal conviction. And speaking of Joe, we can also talk about the competitor for Trump, Joe Biden. So it's between Trump and a senile person. So that's good. So
Well, the senile person is winning in the polls, like big time, so but we know how the polls are, so the Hillary Clinton was winning in the polls.
I think when they have debates that Trump is going to crush him. Joe Biden doesn't know where he is, what he's talking about. He literally is suffering from dementia or some other cognitive capacity issue. It's pretty apparent to me. He literally doesn't know what's going on. So,
But isn't that what they said
talking about
Trump?
Biden or Trump?
Yeah, like you're confusing me now. They both are.
No, Trump knows what's going on. He's just like self-absorbed. We're talking about Biden. Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, at this point in time, and I hate to say this, but they could put anybody up there, that's votable for. If Biden gets a good, number 2, then I'm voting for the number 2. I don't know. I'm so sick of Trump. It's just, I don't know. I'm at such a level of his stupidity. It's just crazy. I don't even know how people could actually seriously consider voting for him. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay.
I'm really just there.
Fair enough.
Don't get me wrong. I voted for Bush the second time, not the first time. First time I voted for Gore. Second time I didn't want to change it. First time I'm a Bush guy. I'm an Obama twice guy. I voted for Giuliani, so I'm back and forth. But Trump, I just don't know how people can do it. I just don't know. And don't get me wrong. I understand people like judges. People like he's been a very good person for the conservative
That's a big deal,
but,
man. I definitely the judge factor is huge for me. I love that RBG seat. I'd love to get that seat.
That'd be great if you can get that. But I don't know. I think Trump is a disaster. Matter of fact, if they put Pence, I would vote for Pence.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the conferences and when Pence talks, it's like, oh yeah, he speaks in like coherent sentences. This is nice. This is good. Yeah, we could have Pence. I wouldn't object to this. Yeah, so.
And this virus thing is really showing. I think his incompetence. It's just the guy's just incompetent. He was incompetent, but he's been incompetent all this time. And most people, I think, if you're in New York or you knew it, but I think he either Trump is probably one of the most luckiest people on the planet. He bankrupts all his businesses. He bankrupts this. He bankrupts that, and he still gets to go out there and a show makes him seem like he's a successful business person. And now he's president of the United States, fucking it up for all of us. So I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah, well,
I hate getting too political, but it's just
Well, that's totally fair.
It crosses the line for everybody at some point. It crossed my line back in 2016. Like I just didn't see how the man has any leadership skills whatsoever. Why would you ever elect a reality show, TV show host, a bad one at that, who has no leadership skills? But we are where we are.
I'm going to say
they
this.
Ran Hillary Clinton against that, though. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But
I
then
was fooled. I was fooled
Trump,
by
I guess
Trump.
Trump was the stupidest thing.
I,
But
I was
Hillary,
fooled in 2016. I'm not going to lie, French. I was fooled. I thought businessman. We need a businessman. I didn't vote for Trump. No. But you know what I mean. I didn't think it was a disaster, but it's a disaster.
oh yeah, it's a disaster for human rights. It's a disaster for the economy. It's a disaster for this coronavirus. We could probably have gotten through the coronavirus a little bit faster if we didn't have such incompetent leadership.
I'm going to call BS on that one because Joe Biden himself was tweeting about how he didn't believe in like the travel bans, which I think saved us a lot of problems and a lot of problems. He said that it was racist and xenophobic and all the rest of it when it was absolutely necessary. He wouldn't put in place the travel ban, so I can't agree with that.
But hold on. But one thing
Biden
about the
wouldn't have
travel
been our
ban.
president anyway. It would have been Clinton.
Yeah,
But one thing about the travel ban,
and Clinton would have done it where Biden didn't.
No,
I mean, it's the
he
same
wouldn't have done it
argument,
either.
Well, okay, speculation, objection.
but one thing about the travel ban, people keep saying that this was such a huge win and it made such a change. That is just total BS. That it's total bull that the travel ban did anything. Number one, that same day he did the travel, he put the travel ban on. 40,000 people made it in from China, anyway, and like 400,000 people from China, even like I think something like almost like 10 or 15,000 people from Wuhan with the damn virus still came to the United States after the travel ban. So it was a travel ban, but it wasn't like he closed the.
Was it 400,000 or was it 40,000? Not that. I mean, it is 10 times different.
40,000 the same day, 400,000. Okay. New York Times reported 400,000 up to this point in time.
And let's remember that he didn't implement the travel ban. He implemented travel guidelines. Delta, United, and American implemented the travel ban that day.
And it didn't stop American citizens from coming back. It just stopped foreign nationals.
How can you stop American citizens? I mean, that's literally my fiance and I are talking about getting married sooner than later because then they won't be able to stop us with travel bans.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be that person, but like, yeah, if I could travel right now to go spend this quarantine with my fiance, I'd much rather be there. But because she's not my wife, the ban was in effect, applicable to her coming here and me going there.
I just fundamentally disagree that the ban was not effective. I think it was effective in preventing additional influx, which is like patient zero people, which would have created more spread. I think it was effective, and even assuming arguendo it wasn't, it was worth the try because it was coming from those places. So I mean,
how would you ever measure how effective it was? Well, you don't have a control. You don't have another sample set to pull from.
Exactly, you're 100% right on that. I'm guessing as to the counterfactual, and this is what you were saying earlier at the start of the stream, right? Like if we all do everything right, we will never know like if it was successful or not, because people can make the argument, right, that if we had done nothing, why did we do all these things? Because nothing happened, right? So like you're right? I can't prove what would have happened in the alternative. I'm just guessing, but I think in the same way that if we do everything right, things will work out. Why do we do all those things? I think it was effective. It's a guess, but it's a reasonable guess.
It's a reasonable guess.
What I'm seeing, so
like that officer with that car. It's reasonable.
No, I think yeah. Fair enough, Nate.
No, but you know what? I will say this. I'll even grant you the travel ban. I'll grant you the travel ban was effective in some way. But understanding when you do look back at the history of this, on January 20th, both the United States and South Korea had their first confirmed case. The South Korean case was in a better place because the South Korean case was somebody they caught at the airport coming in. They caught her at the temperature coming into the airport. They did the temperature scan. She's running hot, and come to find out, they confirmed her positive for COVID-19. They caught her at the airport, so it wasn't like they caught her in the community, and they still had a problem. But with Trump, with our first person on January 20th, the same exact day, he had come from China 4 days earlier. So he was already in the community, going around and all that stuff, and have all these contacts, and they confirmed him on January 20th. The CDC's test, 9 days later, Trump did his travel ban. The CDC's test that was faulty. So even though, the fact that they were testing people with a faulty test for 21 days after their first confirmed case was a problem. Then on top of that, at one point in time, South Korea had something like 10,000 cases to our something like 54 cases. Now think about it. They now have something like total 10,000 cases, where we have 600,000 cases, and we started the pandemic almost identical the same day. So it shows you one thing. It does show you is that, for instance, they're social distancing. They started in February. We started a month after that. It's not like Trump and the Trump administration didn't have the information to make these changes. I think they had the information, and he was so obsessed with the numbers that he thought, hey, we only have 50 people, but he didn't put two and two together to say those 50 people are that number is not accurate, not because we only have 50 people. It's because the test itself was faulty. And I think a lot of people don't understand the CDC's test at the beginning of this pandemic was faulty. And the way they found out, so everybody understands, is that when the CDC first put the coronavirus test was out and they were testing people, it came to New York City, and New York City, here in New York City, they used the test, and they found that it was being inaccurate. They were like, hold on, something's wrong with this test. So they tested pure water. They said, okay, we're going to do saline solution of water versus people who samples that we know are positive for the test. And the stupid water was coming out positive. The water, the sterile water was coming out positive. And that's when, and the CDC's admit, this is not propaganda. The CDC has admitted their test was faulty, and they still use the test 21 days after that for another 1, and didn't even let the labs, the state labs and private labs, use other tests other than the CDC's test. So this was a massive, massive failing on the part of the government. And I'm sorry to say, it's just Trump failed us. He just did.
Yeah, I mean, there's I think some legitimate criticisms to be had. I don't know the degree to which all that can necessarily be mapped onto the United States. The South Korean situation is a little different than the United States. It has obviously a different population density and different geographic reach, and it also has a different baseline culture in terms of things like wearing masks and ability to be compliant to particular procedures that I think that put them in a better position to be more adaptable versus the United States. As to the test issues, I think there were some problems with the tests. If we had used the other tests, I'm not sure how accurate the tests that are out there are even now, because I'm reading some divergent information on that. So I'm not sure it's necessarily an issue with our test being bad or other tests being bad, but I do see like there are a lot of false positive, false negative rates. So there are some issues with the tests, and I'm not sure the degree to which they were better or not, but I think there were some cultural factors that were not necessarily applicable to the United States. So, but I think that you can definitely point to things that Trump did wrong. I think there are things, there definitely mistakes were made. But on balance, I think, things were relatively worked out pretty well. It could have been better, but I think we did pretty well. I think the ban being in place when it was good. At the same time, a lot of people were decrying it as racist and xenophobic when it wasn't. I think that helped. I think the screening procedures they put in place helped.
They didn't put what screening procedures. They didn't put that. That was one of the big issues that they had before they did the lockdown. Is that they weren't, and that was and one of the issues about New York, for instance. Come to find out that our initial cases seem to have come from Europe and not China. So the travel ban from China was great, but it didn't stop it because our issues came from Europe. So I don't know, and it's interesting. One of the more interesting pieces of this thing is that if you see where the cases initiated from around the world, most of the big hotspots were places with international airports. That's why here in New York City, Queens has double the cases of any other borough because both our international airports happen to be in Queens. So it's interesting. It's fascinating to see how the virus just traveled versus on the airlanes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the long term in terms of culture. But I know that you guys are a lot more critical of Trump than I am. I mean, for me, as to his rhetoric, I will say his rhetoric leaves a lot to be desired at best. As to governments, I've been a lot more pleased with the governments than I thought. He's governed a lot more conservatively than I would have thought. I've been pleased with the judges he's appointed. I've been relatively pleased with most of the policies. I was pleased with the tax policies he put in place. Not so happy about the spending. I wish the Republicans would be a lot more fiscally conservative. What happened to that? We just blowing out debt. That's not so great. But on the whole, Kirk, it's been better than what I expected.
Can I ask you about the fiscal piece of it too? Because I'm a fiscal hawk too. I'm let's restrain spending. I'm with you. I'm fiscally conservative. But one thing now is that I don't know, like my conservative friends, I don't know how they square the circle of the tax cuts and the deficit, because you just put another $10 trillion on the credit card, and how that's there's no way that's fiscally conservative. Cutting the business tax rate,
it just isn't
from what 36% to 21%. And there was no there was no income base. You know what I'm saying? They don't get me wrong. The excuse was that we're going to grow GDP. That by cutting the tax rate is going to grow GDP. And we're going to see 4 or 5% GDP growth, and that GDP growth will get us new tax revenue that would be debt neutral. That was a lie. That was a lie all the way through the board. It has not been debt neutral. We have the highest amounts of debt now going into an election year that I think any other president had, other than Obama after the whole Bush fiasco. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know how much of that is tiable to the change of the corporate tax rate. I mean, at the time we had by far, I believe it's correct that we had by far the highest corporate tax rate in the world. I believe the normal corporate tax rate was more around the 20% range that we adopted to. And one of the ideas was it would capture more money because people would have less incentive to put their money outside the United States. So it would keep more money within the United States, so it would increase the tax base.
Repatriation.
Repatriation was part of the idea. So it would grow GDP and it would repatriate. So I don't know the degree to which, because my view on this was, prior to coronavirus, that the economy seemed to be growing. There was pretty much no end in sight. Manufacturing seemed to be returning to the United States. Unemployment was at all-time lows. What Trump said in the State of the Union was roughly correct. That unemployment was all-time low, minority unemployment was all-time low, female employment was all-time highs. Manufacturing was reoccurring in the United States. So it seemed to me that these corporate tax cuts were accomplishing their goal. The degree to which,
but don't forget, you also had record debt, though. Everything you're saying is true, but we had record even under Obama. I'm upset about Obama too. He blew up the debt too, but we still had record debt because these tax cuts weren't. It was like the Bush tax cuts; they weren't debt neutral. They added massively to the debt.
Well, you might be right, and I don't remember specifically enough to contradict you. So I don't want to say something where I don't know for sure. But I will generally agree that spending has been way out of control. That and I don't like them just constantly adding to spending and constantly increasing. They've done nothing to curb spending. So I thought that I don't know the degree to which the tax cuts were or were not debt neutral. So you might have the better end of that argument. But I was under the view that the repatriation and the increase of the economy and stuff was going to lead to more revenue, or at least neutral revenue. And if that didn't in fact happen, then you might have one on me. But I think the spending issue definitely needs to be fixed. So
well, right now, right now, the debt is not even going to be a problem because we're putting another $2.2 trillion and probably another couple of trillion on the credit card now because of the coronavirus.
When it was what $20 trillion or something, and the debt $23 trillion, something like that. Yeah. So it's like this is a major concern for me. I am very concerned about our long-term fiscal solvency. I'd very much like to have a neutral, balanced budget. Constitutional amendment for that matter. Let's put that in place. That'd be good. And because this is just not sustainable, and we're going to have to at some point have some kind of austerity measures if this continues indefinitely. Because there's just, where are we getting this money from? So I will agree with you. I've been very critical of the lack of fiscal discipline from the conservatives.
But it's not only them, though. Let's be fair. The Democrats, when they get there, they spend money too, though. Huh?
Oh no.
Yeah.
I
mean, Democrats spend ginned up whores.
Yes, they do. But we were supposed to be the party of restraint. And that didn't happen. It makes me very sad, Nate.
Listen, when Bush was in there, he's spending money on the military, trillions of dollars for wars. That's, he blew up Obama gets in, he's, I don't want to say welfare, but social programs. He wants to. It's just like if Bernie was to get in. Bernie was going to, Medicare for all. So everybody has their spending plan, but I don't think anybody's just kind of sat down and said, how are we going to make this thing debt neutral? How are we going to balance the books? And let's not forget too, we haven't even talked about the Social Security bomb that's going to drop soon. You know what I'm saying? That's another bomb that we're waiting to drop.
Let's just get depressed on every possible level. Yeah, that's definitely a problem.
Yeah. Guys, I think I'm going to call it a night.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun now. But I would like to thank my guests, Nate and Leonard, for being here and for engaging this, free-form discussion. I hope it was as much fun for them as it was for me, just kind of bouncing around some ideas. So it was 2 hours. We had some fun. If you like this, please go visit their streams. Nate Broady. It's in the description below. I've tagged their channels. So it's at Nate Broady and at Lawful Masses. So you can go visit their streams and their channels. They produce wonderful law content. Go listen to some other lawyers with some different perspectives. Learn different things. And they will produce more videos explaining in greater detail how I'm horribly, horribly wrong about Kansas v. Glover, and that's okay. We can have disagreements, and we can still be friends. But for now, my friends, this has been Uncivil Law with my guests, and till later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.
Peace.